3 men snuck across the border into Thailand, and their only goal was to find the legendary man-eating python, the Scarlet Naga. Rumor had it that within half a year, it had devoured an entire village. The locals all believed it was an evil spirit from hell. But Rick wasn't scared of these rumors at all. He picked up a wine bottle with a venomous snake inside, and in the next second, he swallowed both the snake and the wine whole. In fact, Rick had 20 years of snake hunting experience. He'd come to the rainforest on Thailand's border this time, just to catch the Scarlet Naga, so he could claim the $50 million reward. When the captain found out his real purpose, he immediately demanded double the payment. Rick agreed right away, and tossed a pile of cash to him without a second thought. But the second the captain finished saying thank you, Rick killed him with a single knife strike. Rick's 2 companions were terrified, and they never dared to mention raising the price again. Later, the 3 of them entered the jungle to search for the giant snake. Rick soon spotted fluid left behind by a female python in heat on a tree branch. This scent could drive any male python crazy. Using his map, Rick found a snake-shaped statue, and finally confirmed he'd come to the right place. At that moment, one of his companions found a snake nest. When he pried off the wooden planks, there were dozens of baby snakes inside. They got excited right away. These snakes were worth enough to buy a Lamborghini. Only Rick stayed alert, keeping an eye on his surroundings. After that, one companion carried the bag full of baby snakes back to the boat. But in the next second, the water suddenly rippled strangely, and the Scarlet Naga shot out, coiling around him. When the other companion rushed back to the boat, all he saw was the Scarlet Naga, which had just finished its meal. He tried to run, but it was already too late. The Scarlet Naga spat out the half-digested body, then wrapped him up and lifted him into the air. Just then, Rick arrived at the scene, but he didn't choose to save his companion, because these men were all bait he'd prepared for the Scarlet Naga. The only weakness of this man-eating python was its stretched belly right after feeding. Just as Rick raised his gun to aim, a monkey suddenly screamed, luring the Scarlet Naga away. It turned out 8 more people had entered the area. They were a circus from China, on their way to perform in Thailand. Late that night, circus leader Jack pretended to go to the boat's rear for the bathroom. In reality, he wanted to peek at Lisa changing clothes, but what he didn't know was, a snake was quietly slithering into his pants. In the next second, a sharp pain shot up from between his legs. Luckily, after Captain Tom checked, it turned out to be a non-venomous snake, so Jack finally breathed a sigh of relief. After that, he left Captain Tom's cabin, and Lisa was waiting for him outside. It turned out she knew Jack had peeked at her, but she didn't care at all. On the contrary, Lisa hoped Jack would train her to become a star in the circus. She was willing to do anything for that. Just as the two were about to get closer, a zombie suddenly appeared, scaring them half to death. It turned out, this was the zombie guy, the circus's new member. He and the Taoist priest standing nearby were partners. Jack greeted them warmly right away, but Lisa was still angry that her plan had been ruined. The next day, the boat sailed on as usual, but a large pile of wooden crates blocked the way ahead. Tom wanted to go around them, but Jack disagreed, because that would make them miss their performance date. Since Jack insisted on sailing straight through, Tom had to get some dynamite, and told Billy and Zombie Guy to blow a path open. What they didn't know at the time was, those crates had become a snake nest. After the two finished planting the dynamite, Tom pressed the detonate button. In the next second, countless snakes were blown into the air. It was like a snake rain falling from the sky. The whole boat was instantly overrun with snakes, and everyone rushed inside the cabin. But Lisa was already surrounded by snakes. Just as the venomous snakes were about to attack, Annie used the high-pressure water gun to get her out of danger. Right after that, she washed all the snakes into the river, successfully saving everyone present, everyone except Jack. At that moment, a venomous snake had set its sights on him. Jack tried to kill the snake with a fork, but he accidentally poked a hole in the boat's roof, leaving himself swarmed by snakes. He panicked and fell into the river, and a horde of snakes swarmed toward him at once. At the critical moment, Rick suddenly appeared and saved him. As Jack's savior, Rick boarded their boat smoothly, but Annie sensed something was wrong. She wanted to know how Rick had managed to survive out here alone. Just then, Belle suddenly collapsed to the ground. Rick guessed something had gotten into his ear, so he took out a knife, cut his finger, and used his blood to lure the venomous snake out of Belle's ear. Rick's extensive survival experience impressed everyone, but Annie only became more vigilant. Late that night, Tom was sitting at the bow fishing, but his fishing rod was suddenly pulled into the water. He tried to reach down and grab it, but he fell into the water too. The next day, Annie noticed Tom was missing. Looking at Rick, who was cutting up fish, she immediately had a bad feeling. What Annie didn't know at the time was, Tom had already been turned into bait by Rick. He was going to use the body to lure the Scarlet Naga. Before long, the water suddenly splashed violently. Rick grabbed his fishing rod with all his strength, but the Scarlet Naga was far stronger than him. It snapped the gear right off, and dragged Rick into the water too. He quickly climbed onto a small boat, then picked up a pitchfork, staying on guard against the Scarlet Naga's attack at all times. Just then, Rick felt an unusual ripple in the water, so he thrust the pitchfork, and hit the Scarlet Naga dead on. But in the next second, the Scarlet Naga coiled around Rick in the small boat, slowly sinking into the water. While everyone was shocked by what they saw, Rick actually climbed back onto their boat from the stern, but he looked really disappointed. clearly, compared to his own life, he cared more about finding the Scarlet Naga. But soon, a smile reappeared on his face, because the Scarlet Naga had climbed onto the boat too. It spat out Tom's body, getting ready for its next hunt. Everyone rushed to hide in the cabin, except Rick. He was still trying to catch the giant python. But the Scarlet Naga, which had just spat out its food, had no weakness, so he had to hide too. Since the Scarlet Naga couldn't find anyone, it started trashing the boat everywhere. Just as Annie was about to be bitten, Belle slipped an iron bucket over the snake's head. Blinded, the Scarlet Naga went crazy, crashing around the boat. Rick took the chance to tie a rope around its head, trying to subdue it completely. But right then, the damaged boat suddenly exploded. Rick missed his chance to catch the Scarlet Naga again, and everyone jumped off the boat to escape at once. After the chaos died down, everyone decided to follow Rick's suggestion. Under his lead, they'd evacuate through the rainforest to a safe place. But only one night later, Zombie Guy became the Scarlet Naga's dinner. Everyone was too scared to stay, so they started crossing the rainforest as soon as dawn broke. But they hadn't walked far when the Scarlet Naga caught up again. It coiled around the Taoist priest, who was at the end of the group, and killed him right in front of everyone. The rest of them ran to the shore in a panic, and there, surprisingly, was another boat loaded with supplies. Just as everyone thought they were out of danger, Rick finally revealed his true intentions. He pulled out a gun right away, and told Jack to tie up the others. It turned out this was the Scarlet Naga's lair, and they were all Rick's bait. In fact, the circus had never even received an invitation to perform in Thailand. This whole thing had been a plot by Rick and Jack from the start. Rick had rubbed the fluid from the female python in heat on all of them, waiting for the Scarlet Naga to walk into his carefully set trap. That night, Rick went to the Scarlet Naga's lair to set up the trap. Belle and Billy were placed in the center of the trap, with a huge net surrounding them. The other two girls were tied up nearby as backup bait. At that moment, Rick walked over to Annie and forced her to chug strong liquor, punishment for questioning him earlier. Lisa, who was standing nearby, thought Rick had other intentions, so she started currying favor with him. Rick used his knife to cut her bonds. Now free, Lisa pushed him into a corner nearby, then pressed her body against his. Just then, Lisa took the chance to grab his gun, but she had no idea how to fire it. Rick walked over slowly with a cold sneer, easily taking the gun back. Just as Rick was about to kill Lisa, Annie suddenly attacked him from behind. It turned out when Rick had forced Annie to drink earlier, he'd left the wine bottle on the ground. The two women used all their strength to try to kill this madman. But on the other side, Belle and Billy had already lured the Scarlet Naga over. Jack had been guarding the trap, but before he could trigger it, he was attacked by another giant python. The trap was triggered accidentally, which just happened to protect Belle and Billy. At the same time, Rick managed to break free from the two women. He held Lisa's head down and was about to shoot, but Annie knocked him down with a wooden stick. After that, they freed the two men trapped in the trap. But by then Rick had stood up again, and he was about to shoot everyone with his gun. But in the next second, the giant python suddenly bit Rick, dragging him deep into the jungle. Everyone thought things were over, but Lisa's face turned pale. It turned out the fight earlier had made her abdomen bleed heavily. Soon she stopped breathing. At dawn, only 3 members of the circus were left. Just as they were about to get on the small boat and leave, Belle was suddenly hit by a tranquilizer dart. No one expected Rick to be alive and back. Even the giant python had been killed by him. After that, Rick tied the remaining 3 together and set up huge snake-catching nets around them. Then he strung up steel cables as a barrier trap to stop the 3 from escaping. He knew he didn't have many chances left. This time he had to catch the Scarlet Naga. Rick tied the trap's trigger rope to his body, waiting quietly for the Scarlet Naga to appear. Before long, Rick's carefully set trap lured a large number of pythons, but they didn't get a chance to feast. A giant python with red spots on its eyes showed up. This was exactly the Scarlet Naga Rick had been looking for. Just then, Rick timed it perfectly and triggered the trap, trapping the Scarlet Naga right away. But its strength was enormous, and Rick lost control of it in an instant. The Scarlet Naga broke free from the net, but the net was still tangled around its body. Rick refused to let go, so he was dragged by the Scarlet Naga and wedged between 2 trees. In the next second, Rick's ribs were crushed. He screamed in pain and let go of the rope. The now free Scarlet Naga climbed up a tree, getting ready to launch a fatal attack on Rick at any moment. Just then, Rick finally broke free, but he'd barely taken a step to leave when the Scarlet Naga coiled tightly around him. This top-tier snake hunter with 20 years of experience had finally become the python's prey. At the same time, Billy was biting at the rope frantically. If they didn't escape right away, they'd soon be eaten too. The second Billy successfully bit through the rope, the Scarlet Naga had already finished its meal. The 3 of them hid in a hurry, but the Scarlet Naga still found them. It spat out the freshly swallowed Rick, getting ready to chase down the remaining 3. Belle was about to be caught by the Scarlet Naga, so he grabbed a tree stump and rammed it into the snake's mouth. Annie, who was nearby, also used a wooden plank to stab the snake in the eye. Their brave actions bought them time to run. Just as they were about to escape the rainforest, the Scarlet Naga caught up again. It opened its huge mouth, trying to swallow all 3 of them in one go. But in the next second, the sharp steel cable sliced off half of its head. This man-eating giant python finally died right there. Later, the 3 of them took a small boat and set off on their way home. But in a corner no one knew about, a python even bigger than the scarlet naga was about to get out of the rainforest.